Craig.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just making sure nothing went wrong.
No, I'm just waiting for Ellen just came in and we just have Fred that's left.
Okay. Okay, let me know when we can go. It's 7:02?
Yeah, I mean, you're good to go. He's still not registered yet, but you guys can start the meeting if you would like.
Do you do the live? Do you let it live stream first so we can catch the beginning? Do you want me to give you a second to?
No, I actually started it early today, so it is currently live streaming.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'd like to call the Board of Education meeting to order. This is a work session. It's Thursday, July 30th, 2020. And we are doing this via Zoom. Hopefully, a lot of you are there on live stream. Roll call.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer? She was here a minute ago. Mrs. Kramer?
Sorry, yes, sorry.
Mr. Peterson is not here yet. Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes. Okay, let's all say the Pledge of Allegiance. Sorry, I went out of order.
That's okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
of
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty
liberty
and
and justice for all. Okay, so we're moving on to item 2, our work session. We have our survey results. So if you are, if we're live streaming, this is the survey we sent out to our parents and our staff as well. And we've compiled the results, and this will be the beginning of our discussion. So Mrs. Magyar, do you want to encapsulate the results?
Yes. Craig, if you can pull it up on your screen, please.
Which one do you want to?
Just do the survey first. Yeah, that's fine.
One, or is that the actual?
That's the actual survey. So the results of it, please.
Is it this one?
Well, yeah.
Yep. This will work. So we gave our survey. We had close to 3,200 responses. We had asked our families to make sure that they responded for each of their children. So as you can see, here is the breakdown. And if you can click on the blue arrow there just to see the rest of them, that'd be great. Thank you.
Well, this is just a PDF, so it's
okay.
Not,
sorry, that's fine. Is it the next page?
I don't think it's actually on there.
Okay.
So
we had 3,100 people, close to 3,200 people respond to the survey. And the questions that we asked were really, we had come out with our plan before and talked about aligning our reopening plan with the color-coded system set by the CDC. And so we put that plan out first. It was part of a survey question, so people could refer to it again if they didn't actually see our plan. And the question that we asked them is if they agreed with how we had aligned our learning plans with the Ohio color-coded system, the level system. So in that, we had 43.4% of our families said, yes, we liked how you aligned it. And just as a refresher, that meant that if our county was in yellow or orange, we would be all in-person instruction 5 days a week. If our county happened to be in red, we would be in a hybrid model where half of our alphabet would come 2 days, full days a week. We'd have an off day on Wednesday for cleaning, and the second half of the alphabet would come Thursday and Friday. And so 56% of the people who responded to the survey said they did not agree with that, how we had aligned those learning plans to the color-coded system. So question 3 was if you answered no, so those 56.6% of those people who answered no, what would you rather see in terms of how that alignment would look? And so of that 56.6%, 56.2% said no hybrid, that they wanted in-person instruction every day at the level 1, 2, and 3, which is the yellow, orange, and red level. 22% said that they wanted, or 22.6 said they wanted in-person instruction every day with level 1 just in the yellow, and hybrid with the orange and the red, and level 4 would be all remote. And 21% said that people wanted in-person instruction every day for levels 1 and 2, but remote for levels 3 and 4. So that is how the breakdown went, with most of the 56.6% of the people wanting no hybrid model whatsoever. Question 4 was asking if we were able to reopen for all students in accordance with our Reset Restart plan, how many would send their children to school. So we had over 70% of the families who answered said, yes, we would send our kids to school for in-person, face-to-face instruction. 9.5% said no, they would not, and 20% were still unsure about that answer. Question 5, Craig? Thank you. And so if you answered no or unsure, would you be, we asked the question to try to determine whether or not we would use, families would use our online learning program or not, or if they would go somewhere else. And, obviously this applies, the 53.8% applies because people said, no, yes, we're going to come back in person. 33% decided to say, yes, we would use your online system. 10% are still unsure, and we had a small percentage that said no, they're not going to use our system at all. And this, again, just as a reminder, was for planning purposes. This was not the formal, you're signing up for our online program. We needed to get a sense of numbers so that we could finalize what that online program would look like. Question 6, Craig. So would you be sending, and so the other thing that we needed to get some information on was whether or not our families would be using our school transportation based on the protocols that we had set up in the Reset Restart plan. And we had 36.8% of the people said, yes, they're still going to use our transportation. Close to 40% said no, and 23% said they are unsure. And we plan to follow up, obviously, this survey with yet another survey to have people either opt in or opt out of transportation, should we be in that situation where we needed to find that data so we could then custom our routes to the people who are actually going to use our transportation system. And so we wanted some data to find out, why it would be if people were not going to utilize our transportation, what that reasoning would be. Obviously, we have people that are just clearly not sending their kids back to our school because they're going to utilize another online platform. Many of our families decided that they were going to drive their students to school, and many of our families drive their kids to school now. This is a little bit flipped from what we currently have. Our data now shows that currently, prior to COVID, prior to this whole pandemic, we had about 40%, we had about 60% of our kids who chose to use our transportation, and 40% of our families who drove their students and or kids drove to school if they were high school students. So this has done a little bit of a flip flop on that, where now it's looking like we're going to have about 65% of our families driving or transporting their kids to school, and about 40% using our bus system. Some are obviously waiting for a vaccine, thinking that 2 kids per seat with masks would be too close. And some needed to know more about what our disinfecting protocols would look like on our buses. And that's important information for us to know what other additional information we need to put out as a district. Question 8. Greg?
That's all that is on this.
Oh, okay. So question 8 was really to say if people were planning on using, you know, our online system, we're not going to report in person and come back and use our online system. We asked people to put their name and grade level so we could get a kind of a set of data that we could wrap our brains around to know what that data looked like. So we had 281 students or families that said that their kids were going to come back and use our system. And we have that disaggregated across the grade levels as to where we know. And so based on that data, that is going to help us determine which online platform will be best for a specific grade level. And that's what we're currently working on now to roll out if that were the case, where we would have to run an in-person school and an online school. And the reason I keep couching my words in if, as many as the board found out at 5:15 today, as we found out at 5:15 today, the Cuyahoga County Board of Health came out with a strong recommendation that all schools in Cuyahoga County start with remote learning for the start of their school year, and that we postpone or cancel all extracurricular activities, including sports, band, choir, and any other groups. So this survey obviously was sent out with the indication that if we were going to have a hybrid model at the level red where we are now, and or getting some feedback from our parents to determine if we wanted to keep that hybrid or go to an all-in or, you know, remote, whatever that would be. I think the health department information that just came out today at 5:15 might throw this conversation in a different direction. And certainly I would not want our board to come down hard on a line like that as we just got this information just less than an hour and a half ago, to be able to, you know, assess and go through with some other districts and talk through some of the implications of what those recommendations are. So we can pivot the conversation to talk about that, or if you have questions, I'm happy to try to answer what I know. I think the other thing on our agenda that we were planning on talking about was the need for full day kindergarten and or half day kindergarten, which really is going to tie into this whole recommendation from the Cuyahoga County Board of Health as to going fully remote. In a fully remote scenario, if that's the direction that we decide to follow those guidelines, it would be that, you know, a full day kindergarten becomes a moot point, as there would not be a full day kindergarten program in a remote setting. So just, you know, up for you guys for discussion and talk through and ask questions, but just wanted to make sure that we tied all of those things in together so that you understood, you know, kind of all the ramifications of what that might be. If we were to stick with and not follow the Cuyahoga County Board of Health recommendations of starting in remote, and we wanted to talk about, you know, if we wanted to keep the hybrid or not based on parent feedback, then you've got a situation where kindergarten, in 50% of the scenarios, if the county is in red or if it's in purple, would not be a full day program. And so it begs the question, do we want to even offer a full day program for kindergarten, knowing that 50% of the possibilities would not necessarily be a full day program for our kindergarten students? So I'm going to stop and let you ask questions and discuss amongst yourselves.
Thanks, Joelle. This is Ellen. I'm wondering where the teachers, what thoughts you've been getting from the teachers with all of this.
So great question. OEA, which is the Ohio organization that oversees our union, had issued some recommendations that they wanted to start the year on full remote. We have meetings scheduled on Tuesday with our union to go through what our guidance document was if we were going to be in person and work through some of their questions and concerns and some of their needs, depending on where we land as a district in terms of either taking the Cuyahoga County Board of Health recommendations. Obviously that conversation will look different, but I believe OEA, as the Ohio Education Association, was also in line recommending doing the remote start for the school year.
You know, I'm in agreement with you, Superintendent Magyar, with the fact that we just got this information, you know, an hour and 15 minutes ago. I really think that we should, you know, come to a conclusion with our plan if we are going to move forward, and then wait and punt this till next week before we actually make a decision whether we go remote or not. That'll give you enough time to talk to your colleagues, you know, for us to circle back again with our teachers. And then we're going to have to, you know, make a definitive decision for our parents' sake. But I think we need to do a little bit more homework and discussion with other districts before we actually put a stake in the ground.
Well, yeah, let me also add in, obviously, we just got this this guidance from the Cuyahoga County Board of Health just really an hour and a half ago. So there needs to be time to take a look at it and see how all districts around us are dealing with it and what that really means. Let me also, there's probably a lot of people that are streaming this. If you're looking at the screen, this agenda item has a number of items that might be of interest to some of people that are streaming this. If you pull up our agenda, that first link is the story from cleveland.com that just broke an hour and 45 minutes ago about Cuyahoga County Board of Health recommending all schools start in a remote fashion. Craig had pulled up the next file below it is just the survey without any answers. The file below that is what we just went through, which is the survey with results in a pie chart format. And before you get to that one, Craig, because I want to have you open that in a second, but the two below it were an email from Cuyahoga County Board of Health update and a letter relating to it. And that they were precursors to what was just announced a little bit ago, which is the County Board of Health might be giving guidance to say start remote. So that's the summary of what you're looking at. And Craig, if you would pull up that middle one, the summarized results, because, and if you would scroll down to the last part, which is the summary, what's above is just, it's just the same survey results, just in a little different format without graphics. And if you look at those graphics, some of them can be a little misleading because the second part of it talks about if you don't agree with the plan, you know, where do you land? And so it's helpful to look at these numbers, the summarized results. The blue area is, you know, how many parents agreed that the plan that we have right now, they're comfortable with. And you see that's about 42.5%. The next up was no hybrid. So this is where we basically stay in person through levels 1, 2, and 3, and only remote on level 4. And that was 32.3%. And then, you know, the last two were ones that wanted the hybrid at even more levels or remote at more levels. And so you see that at 13% and 12.5%. So, you know, unfortunately, from a board perspective, you know, while we greatly appreciate all the feedback from our families and our parents, it's clear there's no consensus. I mean, 42.5% is the most, obviously, that people were comfortable with the plan. But, you know, we have a large contingent that also would like to see in person, as well as others who want to be even more restrictive. So anyway, it's important to kind of understand these results as one of the data points that we're going to be looking at. Of course, the guidance from the Board of Health now is going to cause us to pause and figure out what to do with that. You know, do we stay with our plan as is? You know, to make a change right now, I would agree with Joelle and Kathleen that, you know, we just got this guidance. We don't know what others are going to do. it would be pretty abrupt to all of a sudden say we're going to start online. And this is so difficult because so many families just want an answer. They just tell us what to do and then we'll plan for it. And unfortunately, this virus is in control. And, you know, if people are looking at the daily numbers, they're spiking up today again, you know, new high. So that's probably what drove the Board of Health to issue their guidance. So while I'd love to be able to say, I'm ready, let's put a stake in the ground, let's call the roll and let's give our families guidance, it's really hard to do when you just get this kind of news an hour and a half before the meeting.
Anyone else comment?
I'm with you guys. Wait until we see a little bit more what's going on. I don't think we can make any kind of decision an hour after we get this new information.
So
Ellen, Swingman, yeah.
I was just going to add on, right prior to this meeting, I was on a meeting with our Suburban League conference in terms of athletics, because obviously the recommendation from from our county is that we postpone all extracurricular and sports activities. However, other counties are not necessarily in alignment with the guidance that we're getting from Cuyahoga County. And I think that's really important to know. In our conference, in terms of sports, we have schools in 4 different counties. So Summit County had issued some guidance documents last week that had nothing really to do with school guidance, but more to do with sports guidance. And their guidance was recommending that the sports season for the full contact sports get pushed back to competitions not until October 1st. Didn't necessarily address the low contact sports such as golf and tennis and some of the other sports that happen in the fall. And so we've been on constant communications with our Suburban League superintendents, athletic directors, high school principals to try to figure out how do we, and Summit County's in the same boat we are. You know, Cuyahoga County Board of Health just issued this guidance, you know, albeit for us, it was an hour and a half ago or what have you. But they issued this guidance, which is not in alignment with what Summit County or what Portage County had issued. Medina County has not come out with any guidance. And so part of the issue in terms of trying to figure out what to do is, you know, how do you not follow your county guidance? At the same time, all counties are giving different guidance, which then has a direct impact on sports and has a direct impact on how we move forward. And so this has become just an absolute trying to put together a puzzle when you have different guidance coming out of different counties. While we all aligned our school programs to this color-coded system, unfortunately, OHSAA has come out with guidance to say, no, we're going to start the season as regularly scheduled on August 1st. And now we have Cuyahoga County saying, no, we're making a recommendation that you do not start sports. So this has this guidance that came out an hour and a half ago has such a large impact on every aspect of what we're doing. I have been trying, knowing that we had this meeting, to be proactive and reached out to about 30 of the superintendents in Cuyahoga County to say, hey, what are you thinking based on this new guidance? You know, fortunately or unfortunately, I was the other one who had a board meeting an hour later where everybody else's board meeting is scheduled, you know, tomorrow, or it's scheduled, or not tomorrow, I'm sorry, it's scheduled early next week. So I think that we'll have more of a consensus of what the county is thinking in terms of, you know, what we're doing with both school and athletics. I will tell you in my preliminary information that I have from many of the superintendents around, you know, no one is comfortable going against the County Board of Health recommendation, certainly because we're not medical doctors and we need to rely on the experts in this field to be able to make those health decisions for us as superintendents. And so that's kind of the sense I'm getting. However, I'm not going to go out and quote and say this district has decided. That's not my role, but there seems to be a consensus that nobody wants to go outside of the recommendation of the County Board of Health. However, just like I am, they're all going to go back and have these conversations with their board and hopefully, you know, come to a consensus on an agreement that yes, we're going to follow this, or no, we're not. So just wanted to put that out there as well.
Well, I think, Joelle, too, we have to understand what's the implication if we were to go against this guidance? I mean, are we exposing the district to, you know, extra exposure legally, right? So if we go against the guidance and you know, we open up and, you know, students get sick or teachers or staff, you know, we have to understand what exposure does that put us on? Does that mean that somebody could take legal action against us because we didn't follow Board of Health guidance? So I think that's one of the reasons, another one of the reasons why we don't want to make a rash decision tonight and say, okay, well, now let's go against it or let's go along with it. We really need to understand better the implications of what our options are with this new guidance.
Which I'm just going to, oh, I'm sorry, Mark. I thought you were done.
I was just going to make one other comment because I know a lot of people are streaming this, and I know a lot of people have brought up the concern about why are we following county data? The county's red, but if you zoom in on the zip code and the communities, you know, you'll see that the area we're at, which is the southern end of Cuyahoga County, kind of just on the other side of Summit, that the number of cases are much lower. And some of those documents that are attached here actually discuss that. So, and talk about how using zip code data, the current form of zip code data is not really good data to be tying your plan to right now. So I just wanted to throw that out there so that because I know a number of people have brought that up. Spend some time and look at those documents too. You'll see that other people are saying, look, the zip code data, you know, it would be great if it was better, but what's out there now is a little thin for some people to say, let's make a recommendation off of that.
And what I was going to just chime in and point out all along, and I know most other school districts are doing the same thing, but I mean, we do still have the virtual option out there, regardless of what color code we're in. And, you know, we already have that option for people. And I know it wasn't, we weren't at the top of the game last spring when we had to go virtual, but hopefully in the intervening months, we've been able to really, you know, make that a better plan for people who really, really want to pursue that option. So I guess, like, I understand there, you know, what the county's saying, but it's been an option all along for anybody in the district who wants to take that. And then the other, I just really would like to know, I mean, I feel like the meeting with the teachers union next week is really, really important because, I mean, there's only so many things we can say that, you know, we want to do, but obviously we need to make sure the teachers are on board with whatever we recommend. And I guess you know, in light of what the county just came out with, I'd really like to know how, you know, what the teachers' thoughts are on moving forward.
So a couple of things. I think it's important to make the distinction between online learning and remote learning. So online learning was an option for if we were going to have in-person sessions. So it, you know, in our current plan, in the yellow and the orange, that would be, you know, in-person face-to-face learning, and there was an online option for families who did not feel comfortable with that. And that was what we were working on, and what that online option would look like. And we surveyed our staff on Monday, and we're still getting those survey results back to say, you know, what are your plans to come back? Are you planning on coming back? And, you know, trying to get a sense of that. And if people, you know, could not come back, would they teach remotely, so that we can finalize and develop that plan of what that online learning would look like. We know from parents and feedback that we've gotten through emails that if people were going to choose that online option, that they wanted it to be done by our teachers. And so that's why we collected the initial data, so that we could go ahead and plan and then staff accordingly to make sure that that online learning would happen. Remote learning, if the district decides to follow the guidelines set up by Cuyahoga County Board of Health, remote learning means that we're going to do a format, not the same type of instruction. And we all realize that, but it would be a format just like it was in the spring, where the students' teachers would be providing. So there's a difference between online learning, as we're defining it in our plan, and remote learning. Remote learning simply means we're taking our classroom and we're providing it remotely. online learning might be a different type of learning from the standpoint that it might be a different curriculum, or there's one teacher that might be teaching 25 second graders that might be from all 3 different elementary schools, but they're providing that online instruction. So, you know, it's a different definition. So yes, if we're not going to go to all remote learning, families have the option of having an online option and then having an in-person option should they not choose to send their child in person. So, and I think that, you know, the teachers, while we have not had the discussion locally with our physical teachers, which is scheduled for Tuesday, I think OEA, as their state organization, has put out their recommendations that yes, they are in support of starting the year on remote. We were having our initial meeting scheduled was to go through some of those ideas and look at that survey data that we sent out to our staff to say, okay, we have this many teachers that want to come back, and then help and work collaboratively to problem solve to say, okay, what does this look like moving forward? Now it might be that our conversation is switching to say, okay, if we go to remote learning and that's where the direction that we decide to go in, what does remote look like, knowing full well that we learned a lot of lessons from the spring and we learned a lot of things that we need to do better. And so how does that look moving forward? So I think, you know, depending on where we land in terms of if we're going to follow the Cuyahoga County Board of Health recommendations to start our year remotely, it's going to drive that discussion we have next week with our union.
You know, Joelle, I think the other thing that would be helpful to find out, and I'm not sure how the structure is with speaking to our teachers and the union. You know, I'm not sure if we're planning on surveying all of our teachers and staff, or if we're just working through union leadership or not. But at some point, you know, this guidance talks about starting the year. It doesn't say the first 9 weeks or the first month, or it just says start, I think. So even there, it sounds like there's some vagueness with the guidance they may have put out. And the reality is that we may not know when, you know, how long if we end up starting remote, how long that would run. At some point, we're going to get back to the plan, though, to say, okay, either in person or hybrid. And while the survey results from our families is really helpful, the one thing that I've had a lot of concern about is on the hybrid model is, you know, how effective is that going to be? You know, how effective is that going to be in reducing risk of contracting the disease? And how effective is it going to be from an education model standpoint? You know, my worst case nightmare would be that we adopt and stay with this hybrid model. And at some point when we open, whether that's the beginning of the year or later, that we start ping-ponging between 2 weeks we're in hybrid, then 2 weeks we're in person, and then we're going back to hybrid. And I'm wondering, as we're trying to assess our plan and what we're going to do, if there's a way to canvass our educators to find out what are their thoughts on this hybrid model. You know, is the view worth the climb, or is this going to be, you know, a lot of potential back and forth, which might actually degrade the whole process and not be worth it? So I don't know, was there any thought about trying to engage them on this whole hybrid model? I mean, I know we kind of put it together as a kind of, we're trying to thread the needle, like, okay, let's get everybody back in class at least part of the time, but I'm not sure if the logistics of it are going to turn out to be what we want.
We did not ask that specific question, but it's certainly something we can bring up in conversation. You know, should the board and our district decide not to follow right now the Cuyahoga County Board of Health guidelines. And like I said, you know, I know the recommendation from OEA has come down that, you know, they are in agreement with what Cuyahoga County just came out with in terms of how to start the year. So certainly Mark can ask the question. I don't know if it would be, if it's, you know, if it's, and you said the start of school, most of the superintendents, this is pretty hard to kind of turn around. So, the start of the school, some of the guidance was talking about, that we can assess weekly. I don't know if that's fair to our parents and or our staff to be able to, turn around on a dime to say, yeah, we'll start online and maybe it's for a week and maybe it's not. I mean, our families need time to plan. They need childcare. So, if it's a decision that we decide to follow this guideline, the guidance by Cuyahoga County, I think we do as a leadership body need to put a stake in the ground and say, we're going to do this for the first 9 weeks. We're going to do this for the first semester. The current calendar, as it was presented, to build in that kind of proactive remote learning, from Thanksgiving to the holiday break. And we did talk about, if the situation in the county got better, could we pull that back? Absolutely. We were talking today, some of our superintendents this morning, to say, if we're going to go to remote, we need to put a stake in the ground as to how long that's going to be, because as you stated last week, Mark, it's easier to pull back from that than it is to add it in. And so, because we already had that built into the calendar, if we decide to go to a remote learning and follow this guidance, it would be my recommendation with the current 3 weeks that we have built into the school calendar, that it would be through at least Christmas break, because we already had, it makes no sense to go 9 weeks, bring the kids back for 2 weeks if we're able to safely, and then take them out again for another 3 weeks. So, it would be, I don't think we have the ability to staff, to turn around, to clean, to get classrooms ready in a period of a week, as the guidance is stating. And that, if we're going to make that decision, it's going to have to be for, a fixed period of time. Most of my colleagues around the county also said the same thing. It's either going to be for a semester, we'll reevaluate it 9 weeks, what that might look like. But whatever that is, we need to give our community, some guidance around what that timeline would look like so that they can plan accordingly.
I think to Mark's point about the hybrid, the beauty of it is it's so flexible. It gives a lot better social distancing, and you can also do it half of our kids in the morning and half in the afternoon, 5 days a week. But it gives them a chance to see their teacher and to see their, the other kids too, and still do a much better job of social distancing. And I don't want to bring up a big discussion on it, because really right now I think it's moot.
I would agree.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I would agree with Fred. I mean, I think right now we could go on and on about this. I think the one thing we have to consider, though, with the hybrid is that, it's a luxury to be able to stay at, not a luxury. It's not everybody can't stay at home. And we're really creating a difficult situation for a lot of our parents to be able to have to do that. I am not inclined to support the hybrid because of the fact that, I don't know that a lot of our parents can do that. They need to go to work and they don't have that ability to go back and forth. So I almost wish we would just take it out and go with the way the majority of the survey said, which was, in person. So
that's not true. The majority of the survey liked the plan that we have,
which
includes the hybrid.
Yeah, 46%.
I missed that.
55.5%.
Wait.
Yeah, it's if you pulled up that summary result, because these numbers this is where these numbers get confusing if you look at this survey. Craig, if you pulled up the summary tab, so at the bottom is the summarized result. So, again, it can get confusing, but so 42.5% agreed with what our current plan, which includes the hybrid on level 3. And then about a third wanted to go in person in level 3. And then the last two wanted to be even more restrictive than our plan. But again, it's not a clear, people were you know, we're kind of spread out. So I think we don't have to put, right now our current plan has the hybrid model, but what we're saying is this new guidance from the Cuyahoga County Board of Health is going to change everything likely, but we're not ready to make that change today because we just heard about it. And so what we probably need to do is set up another meeting, and I apologize to all of our families. They want certainty, and it's so hard to give certainty. We probably need to go reconvene again next week and say, you know, now what do we do with this latest guidance? You know, let's run out the details on it and figure it out. At some point, you know, we're going to be at a place where we can get back in the buildings and get back to face, but it's hard to know, you know, when that's going to be. I mean, I would agree with Joelle that we certainly don't want to say, well, let's do this for 2 weeks and then start bouncing around, you know, and trying different education models. It's, you know, that's very disruptive. So, you know, that's something we'll have to look at. If we decide that we want to follow the guidance and not we want to start remote and not in person, then the next question is going to be, how long do we do that? Do we do that for the full semester? Or, you know, do we do it for, you know, less than that and try to get our students back in the building? So I think before we meet next time, you know, there's obviously some homework to do on this guidance to see what the ramifications of this guidance are. It sounds like we're going to be meeting with our education staff, and hopefully we might be able to get some new insights there. The other question I would ask Joelle is the last time that we talked about this, we talked about assembling some type of a committee or task force that would have representation from all of our stakeholders as maybe a guidance for us to be able to vet some of this stuff out and have everybody have a voice at the table. Has there been any movement on setting something like that up?
We haven't said we have not set anything like that up yet. It's just been we've had guidance changes so much that we haven't done the task force yet. We've had different groups work on different aspects of the plan, and I think, as I mentioned in the last meeting, we were going to pull people from each of those groups to put together a task force. But you know, I feel like we need to land on what that plan is before we have a task force to come together and say, all right, give us feedback. What are we going to do? How do you feel like this? We have to give them something to task force around, I guess, is my thought on this. You know, our plans have been driven by, you know, guidance that is outside of us locally. It's been really driven by what we've been given from the governor, what we've been given from the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics. I mean, all of these are outside of us. And so, you know, that's where our plan has driven from. I think once we come up with a plan, the appropriate time to assemble that task force is to say, is this plan working, or how do we need to tweak it? But we need to give them something to kind of, you know, wrap their brains around to say, this is going to be your plan. How do we own it? How do we monitor it? How do we make sure that this is all happening? So that's kind of where, you know, my thought was on putting this task force together, was to actually be the task force that's going to say, how is this plan working, and be the assessment vehicle around that.
Well, so this might be a good, healthy discussion then. I don't know where the rest of the board is. I was thinking something very different, which is the whole reason for the task force is to give influence into the plan, not vet it or cross-check it when the plan's already done. I guess my thinking when we talked about this was that we would get more voices from more stakeholders in on the discussion of what the plan looks like. And so that when we get the plan, we would already have had some level of involvement from all of our stakeholders in the final product. I don't know, what was the rest of the board's thinking on what this task force would look like?
I just, when Governor DeWine at the beginning of the month set that restart plan up, there's guidelines that he and ODE put together as to what we should be doing in order to get school back in session. So I feel like as long as we're complying with those guidelines that, you know, the governor and ODE set out, I don't know that we need a task force at this point. And I think part of the problem here is this is a moving target. So I don't know. I just don't think now is the time for a task force, as long as we can make sure that we're following those protocols, because I feel like as long as we're following those protocols, we are getting input from the appropriate stakeholders.
I kind of agree with Mark. I'd like to see all of our stakeholders work together to, I guess Mark called it flesh out the plan, whatever. And that includes, what implementing the plan is going to look like. And that, I guess that applies across the board, whether it's in person or remote or online or hybrid, whichever.
Well, Fred and Mark, if you take a look at the ODE recommendations, getting input from stakeholders is part of their protocol. So as long as we're following that, I mean, Craig and Joelle, you can chime in here, but are you, I assume you're looking at that and following those protocols, and that, I guess I just don't see the need to set up a separate task force if we're following what ODE recommended.
Our plan has been put together. There's been different groups that have worked on different parts of that plan to come up with the collective plan. So, is there a task force that's overseeing the entire plan? No. We had, people who sat together, a team that sat together to come up with like what is going on with the PPE. That was, a collaborative group of people. We've had people come up with what will asynchronous and synchronous learning look like. So we have had different groups of people involved in different plans. And then we took that collaborative effort and put it together in our plan. And then that was run through to get feedback on, from different stakeholders at that point. Once we got the plan together, we then got feedback from PSO, we got feedback from our union. So there has been a very collaborative effort to do this plan. There hasn't been like an overseeing body, so to speak, that has overseen every aspect of it. We've involved and engaged people on very specific parts of the plan and put it together, and then got feedback from the union and from our PSO on what they thought of the plan moving forward. So it has been, we followed the guidelines of ODE. We just didn't do it as one collaborative body. And talking to many of my colleagues, they've done it the same way, because some people are better versed in looking at what online learning would look like. Some people are better versed in what PPE would look like. And so, there's not one entity that might be well versed or be able to give, effective feedback on every aspect of the plan. So we try to engage people that would be more appropriate for different parts of the plan, rather than looking at a task force to oversee the whole plan.
Well, yeah, I mean.
Well, and here, hold on. We need, and we got an email about this. We need to give people direction. They elected us as leaders, and that doesn't mean rushing, but we also owe them direction. And that means definitiveness, so they can go and go on with their life and the other things in their life as well. And I think it's a good thing to wait till next week so we can gather more information around us. However, I think we have to make a decision, and that just for the sake of our parents, for the sake of the people who are trying to go back to work. And I would love to have a task force. I feel like our survey did a good job of that and included the stakeholders, but we're now getting to a time where we owe them direction. And I really think next week, other than other things are going to happen, and we've talked about this being fluid, we need to do this. As a teacher, I need some solidity myself in my day job, and that direction to get planning, get moving. And I know that our teachers feel the same way, and our parents need it as well. They need us to take a direction. And that means, like I was talking about with the hybrid even, I see our survey says that. However, I'm also thinking about the fact that I have a choice not to send my kids back to school, if I don't like, having them go in person, but I don't have a choice if I need to go to work. So that's why I'm almost, even with the survey, I want to respect that, but there are some things that collectively, I think we need as a body to make a decision on. That's input, but we need to make that decision, and we need to do it next week, and again, it can change, but we owe it to people. That's my thought.
I guess one question I have regarding the convening of a task force at this juncture is we are inside of 4 weeks for the start of school. What is the expectation if a majority of the board is interested in exploring an additional oversight committee? What's the expectation for them to provide feedback and provide that definitive direction? Again, just we're inside of 4 weeks, and I'm worried that, to Miss Mack's point, we owe families a decision. We still need to go back to discussing kindergarten because that's going to impact whether or not these families can make arrangements. So while I think it's good to have opinions and input, I think we've done an effective job with 3,200 students being represented in that survey data. I think that's pretty comprehensive data to start formulating a plan. But again, to Mrs. Mack's point, we have to give these parents a direction. It's not fair to continue to punt this down. I mean, if we continue to have conversations around waiting a little bit longer for a little bit more data, we're going to be up against the start of school, and then what?
Well, so yeah, a couple of things. The fairness of this is, I don't think anybody would argue this is unfair. This virus is unfair, and what it's doing is unfair. I don't think anybody is suggesting we wait until next week because we just want to sit around and relax for a week. I mean, so listen, we just got this guidance today. I mean, it's Thursday and we just got this guidance. So is it realistic that we would meet tomorrow? I mean, I'm sure we could probably all clear our calendar and meet tomorrow, but is that enough time to understand the implications of this? Probably not. So what we're probably talking about is setting up a meeting early next week to reconvene after we've digested this latest guidance and figure out how do we include that into our calculus of what is our plan going to look like.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree that we do need time to digest this information. I guess I'm looking for additional clarity on if we can make a realistic decision about direction next week. And again, it goes back to what sounds like a majority of the board's interest in convening some type of additional task force. Is that being convened in the same time frame?
Well, so on the task force from my perspective, the task force was never going to be a definitive body that sets the direction. They were just going to be, when we talked about this, maybe just kind of reground what I was suggesting from our last meeting, which is this is not a group of 50 or 60 people. This is a smaller group of stakeholders, representatives from our different stakeholders that would make a commitment to being on this task force for a prolonged period of time. Well, how long? Well, how long is the virus going to be with us? So there would be continuity. You wouldn't have people coming in and then swapping out. The idea is that on our journey, on our COVID-19 journey, we would have a group, a task force, a committee that would be engaged at a deeper level in the details and could be able to touch base with some of their connections, their contacts, bring their knowledge to the table, their experiences to the table, and help provide input. So it's not a definitive body that says here's the direction, but it's really a guidance body that we could rely on as another data point, right? We're using a lot of data points. Joelle mentioned that before. All the data points that went into this, from ODE to American Pediatrics Association to CDC to board. Now we got Cuyahoga County Board of Health. We have DeWine, who's obviously there's all these data points, and the task force or the committee. What I'm suggesting is just something that would be assembled with a consistent set of people that could stay in touch with all of this information at a deeper level and provide perspective, I guess. So it doesn't need to be up and running before we meet next week, because the virus isn't going to be gone next week. What I'm suggesting, and maybe that's good that we talk this out so we get on the same page, is just to have a body that is, that is consistent and would be able to continue to meet and stay apprised, not every day, working 4 to 6 hours a day. I mean, that's what our staff is charged with, but just to stay close with the details and provide thoughts and express opinions.
Okay, so this was more of a long-term sort of year-long, however long COVID is around process, not like definitive direction up front.
Yes, I mean, that was what I was suggesting. So, maybe we all took it differently, but what I was suggesting is an ongoing body that could continue to provide guidance as needed.
Okay, so, respectfully, I want to call the question to Mr. Dozen's point. Which board members are interested in convening a task force for the purpose that he described?
That would be yes
Mrs.
for me.
Yeah, that's right. Mrs. Kramer, you made your thoughts. Are they still the same?
Yeah, not at this time, maybe down the road, but not right now.
Mrs. Wigman?
I tend to agree with Ellen. If it's not necessarily has to be convened before we sort of make some more definitive direction next week, but it's more of an ongoing collaborative effort, I don't see any problem with that.
I agree.
Okay. So so the agreement is that we do think a task force, correct? Not for right now, we have to get this together, but a task force put together of people to give us feedback, correct? But for a long term, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Correct, everyone? Okay, so we need to ask Mrs.
From my
Magyar
point of
to,
view.
yeah.
Actually, that's not correct. I'm not interested in setting that up right now. I think there's too many other things to do. Okay. Maybe once we get our plan, at least initially in place, but I don't want to add something else to
Gotcha.
the administration's plate right now. Okay.
Okay, Mrs. Wigman, yes or no?
I agree with Ellen. I think if we can sort of get through the final planning stages of opening the school, but then continue an ongoing dialogue throughout the year, I think that's completely appropriate.
Okay, I agree. I don't want to add any more. I just think there's a lot on our plate. I feel like, to Mrs. Magyar's point, she does have a lot of people who are giving input. And I know we get a lot of email and a lot of feedback from our parents as well. And I just really think at this time, there's just too many other things that require energy. So thank you for that suggestion, but we're going to move on from that right now. Okay, so we're going to move on to the discussion for kindergarten. This is tied into the other discussion. The genesis of this is, in the past we had full day kindergarten where we charged a tuition, and then we had 3 half-day kindergartens, I believe. We've had a discussion just like at a board level of, can we say that that's something we want to start and do. My point is, and please add on, Mark, you're very good at summarizing. My point is, I don't feel like at this time it's fair to charge for a full day model. I just really think that it's something we can explore in the next semester, but I think for the start of school and for the first semester, we should across the board just have a half-day model that would allow our teachers to have spacing. The idea being that the full day class in a 22 pupil class would have 11 in the morning, in my opinion, and 11 in the afternoon. We have not kindergarten screen. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, there's a lot of testing that has to be done at the beginning of kindergarten. And by us doing that half-day model across the board, that would allow our teachers to, get some of the things that we normally would have had done in the spring done as well. So my thought is to do a half-day model, no tuition-based, revisit this at the end of October. And if people would like to go full day, to start it in the second semester.
So respectfully, I just want to correct it. In a half-day model, it wouldn't be that you'd have a class of 11 because you still have 250 kids. So what you would implement is a AM class of 22 and a PM class of 22. So it wouldn't be that you would have just 11. So because we still have, close to 300 kids. but so
can I ask you something? So if I was a teacher and I had normally had a full day class of 22, why couldn't I have an AM 11 and then the other half in the PM?
Because we'd have to hire 6 more teachers to accommodate the 200 and some kids that we have. Because currently, you know, so you have 12 teachers that have 22 kids. So we wouldn't be able to service all the kids with the number of staff we had.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so the, you know, some of this discussion was surrounding about whether, I mean, right. So right now we have this all day kindergarten model, which is tuition based. What we talked about was, again, going back to our current plan, which, you know, is subject to change, obviously. But we talked about the current plan says that after Thanksgiving, everything would be remote. And what we talked about was pulling the all-day kindergarten as an option right from the get-go and just going to a half to a half-day model and not even offering the all-day kindergarten model, regardless of the tuition part. I mean, tuition could, if you left the all-day kindergarten, you could still do the tuition. You could just prorate it based on how many days you end up actually doing. It's the same thing we did this past spring when we truncated the year because of the virus and everybody went remote. So what we're talking about, and again, you know, here again, it's subject to change. If we decide everything's going to be online for the first semester or first part of the semester, then this whole discussion becomes moot. But what we talked about was, you know, do we want to remove the option of all-day kindergarten right now and say we're going to put a hard stake in the ground right now to remove all-day kindergarten as an option? And you know, my position was to not do that right now, that so many of our families rely on all-day kindergarten, and that we could do it now and provide certainty, or we could leave it in, and if the world changes in 3 or 4 weeks, maybe we can pull this off and parents can have all-day kindergarten. So this is such a balancing act, because I know everybody wants certainty, and that we're all chasing our tails on certainty, and it's really hard. And so, you know, I think what's in front of us this evening is we could say, do we want to put a hard stake in the ground right now and say we are not going to offer all-day kindergarten for the first semester? And I think that's the question at hand. And my position is I would not want to do that now. I would want to still give our families who rely on all-day kindergarten hope that we still may be able to do it at some point, whether it's right at the beginning of the year or some point within the first semester, still provide that.
So in our current model, which, you know, to your point, 46% of our families like the alignment of our current model. In our current model, 2 levels, red and purple, if our county is in red or purple, you've got a 50% situation where you're not offering a full day kindergarten program. So you only have, and you have a 50% opportunity where you can offer you can offer a full day program. So with the current guidance and with starting with remote, I mean, there's a way more likelihood that we will not be having a full day program, because when in a remote setting where teachers are providing instruction to kids remotely, what we learned in the fall is there was no difference between what the half-day student was receiving in terms of instruction or the full day student was receiving an instruction. There is developmentally appropriate amounts of time that students should be sitting in front of a computer and doing those types of activities. And so to be able to differentiate that level of instruction between a half day and a full day in a remote setting is almost virtually non-existent. In a hybrid model, your kids are only coming half the time anyways. So in 50% of the scenarios that we have currently, if we were to stick with our current plan and or follow the guidance that was just given down by Cuyahoga County, your kindergarten kids are only in a half-day situation. So I think it is appropriate to put a stake in the ground to say, we're either not going to offer full-day kindergarten for this school year only, because 50% of the time they're not going to be in that situation. And even if it was for a first semester thing and said we can reevaluate it second semester, we can do that. We would have to make that decision if we were going to offer full day for the second semester well in advance of probably Thanksgiving, because that's going to require, well, if we're remote, it wouldn't, but if we're not remote, it would require some room arrangements to go from a half-day model back to a full-day model and get those rooms set up appropriately to be able to accommodate that second semester full-day need. So I think the board does need to kind of put a stake in the ground right now to say, yes, we're either going to offer it or no, we're not, knowing that 50% of our scenarios that we have set up moving forward is really not a full day program for our students.
Well, yes, but I just want to take the positive potential, which is in 3 weeks, if Cuyahoga County goes yellow or orange and stays there the whole semester, we will have pulled the plug on all-day kindergarten for all of our families who rely on it prematurely, in my view, which is why I don't see the need to pull the plug today. I would prefer to wait and leave hope for our parents who rely on all-day kindergarten that maybe things will get better. I understand there's a flip side to it, which is we could put a stake in the ground and there'd be certainty. But for certainty, a lot of our parents 3.5 weeks out now, might have to be scrambling for what they're going to do in a half-day model. So anyway, so that's my opinion is that, we wait because that provides hope for our families that rely on all-day kindergarten.
Mark, I like your optimism, but I unfortunately, based on what's gone on the last few weeks, I want to put a stake in the ground now and say we're not going to offer it the first semester at least. They need to be able to plan. I know we all need to be fluid, but I can't imagine things getting significantly better between now and August 24th. I think we need to put a stake in the ground and not offer it first semester.
As much as it bothers me not to be able to offer it, if we give them a week instead of 3 weeks or 3.5 weeks, whatever, I think they're going to have a better shot at coming up with a solution. So I would put the stake in the ground now and say no, full day.
Mrs. Wigman?
I agree with Mr. Peterson.
Okay. This is, if it makes it any better, this is how Independence ran their program for years, is they would start half day and then switch to full day in the new year. So, I think we need to be definitive as a body, and it sounds like the majority agrees with that. So unless I'm incorrect, that we are going to not offer full day. And we'll revisit that, like Mrs. Magyar said, maybe in late October. So if parents are interested, we'll be able to let them know that'll be coming down the pipe, but not until second semester.
Well, and I think it's fair to say, and appropriate to say, even if you follow our current plan, the first day of school and those months, because we're in red right now, are only going to be a half-day program. And if you decide to follow the Cuyahoga County Board of Health guidance to say remote, it's still only going to be a half day. So what we know for sure is the first, start of school is only going to be a half day program anyways. So I think it's, it's not, I understand and I appreciate what Mark's saying, holding out hope, but if the Cuyahoga County Board of Health is coming out and recommending that we all start remote, the chance of us being in yellow or orange for any time soon is probably slim and none. So the other two choices, whether it's our plan or following the guidance of the Cuyahoga County Health, they're both just a half-day option.
Okay. How are we going to communicate this out to parents?
We have our emails already teed up to be able to do that after we have this meeting first thing tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon at the latest to talk about that. But you know, part of that communication is going to go out to be patient based on the new guidance that we just received today at 5 o'clock, and we'll have more decisions. But at least we can tell you this. But again, it'll tie to what I just said, that if the board decides to stick with our plan, it's hybrid, half day, or if the board decides to follow the Cuyahoga County Board of Health recommendations, it's remote, which is half day anyway. So, you know, I'm comfortable enough putting that out there to our kindergarten parents to say, you know, in either case, plan on this, either half day or, you know, remote, because those are our only two choices right now if the board decides to do that. Or if you eliminate the half day, I guess, you know, I guess you could have another option. But it doesn't, that's why timing and decision making are of the essence, that we have to figure out what we're going to do so that we can provide guidance. I guess as I'm talking through this, the only I guess the coming out of left field would be if the board decided to get rid of the hybrid model at Red and decided that that was going to be all in person, and then, you know, do you do full day kindergarten or not, because you now have a 75% chance of being in if you're not going to follow the Cuyahoga County Board of Health guidance.
Joelle, can we, when that email goes out, can we make sure that there's a link to this this board work session or board meeting, so that our work session, so that if any families want to dial into the discussion, they can, you know, they can dial into it and get the background on the decision.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll make sure that Craig sends that to Jim so it can go out.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any further discussion on this, board members?
Nope.
Okay. All right. I'm going to move on through our agenda. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and we will be having another meeting next week sometime to have some more direction. But at least I feel like, you know, with the kindergarten, we are in a good place, at least giving some direction with that. Okay, item 3, executive session. Can I have a motion to enter into executive session?
So moved.
Can somebody second, please?
Yeah,
Thank
second.
you. Thank you. This motion to adjourn into executive session is to conference with the school board attorney concerning pending or imminent court action. And it's G3, Fred. Can we roll call?
Mr. Dosen,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman,
Yes.
Mrs. Mack.
Yes. No
Okay.
new business will be conducted. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Take care.